All right, to begin with, we're going to come into here. We're going to take a look at how we can use the tools to place a platform cover on this model. To start off with, we're going to come across our ribbon till we see PowerPack and left click on that. And inside the ribbon area, we'll come across until we see the PowerPack connection vault. Left clicking on that will bring up a tool palette with a multitude of different connections that can be used for many different things. Just going to come into here, down the side, the different categories till we see platform cover. We're just going to come to the first one and select that. It then asks me, do I want to place my platform cover based on beams or area? And in this case, I'm just going to select beams. I'll pick the beams that define the contour that I want my cover to use. And I'll right click. Then it says, select a point inside the contour. So I'll just come inside and pick. And then it says, do you want to split the cover? I can say yes or no. In this case, I'm going to split the cover, so I will say yes. And again, I can go by either beams or by points. And I'll pick beams and pick this beam going across and right click. You'll see when I do that, it uses that beam that I selected to create this platform cover with the split along that beam. I now end up with two separate covers, both of which are being controlled by this dialog box. In here, if we go through this, we'll see we have different options. First of all, the type is platform cover, which nothing to do here. We can go to About. It tells us a little bit about the tool. The covers themselves, it says create covers, and how do you want to create plates or gratings? And if you switch, you can see it switches between them. We're going to stick with plates for this. And you can create welds if you want. I'm going to leave that off. And we're going to look at how we can bolt this down after. And the projections. So you can project this outwards by a certain amount. So you can control the projections of that plate from here. If you need to vertically offset this, lift it up or place it down even, you have the option to do that from here to vertically offset it. And you can determine what the plate thickness is going to be. Your chamfers allows you to modify or adjust the corners. So if I wanted to, I could come in and turn this on. We'll look at the corners. You'll see it starts to get a chamfer in here. Let's create something a little bigger so we can see it. And you can see I get my corners chamfered. So if that's something that you're looking to do, if you want to chamfer the corners in between members, you can turn that on and create your chamfers. You don't have to do all of them the same. You can uncheck this and determine the corner that it is that you want to place that chamfer onto. We also have the option to do edge contours. Now in here, I can come in, I can say I want to have a rectangular or round. And you can see what this does is it creates these contours around the edge of where I've placed the plates. This is good for areas where perhaps you want to create openings for handrails. You can do this, turn it on, automatically creates that. You then have the option to determine what is the length, what is the width, and you can set the start distance from the corners by a certain amount and the distance in between the contours to whatever you want. Line that up with your handrails and you have the option to cut out the plate so that you can place a handrail with a plate into that area if that's something that you need. Or if you need the contours cut out for any other reason, it's there. In this case, I'm not going to create that. You could also do round contours. It would be the same thing, except the contours themselves would end up being round. Additional contours. Now, not the edge contours, but the additional ones are contours that can be placed on the inside of the structure. So if I were to say I need a contour inside, I can then say what is the vertical or horizontal distance. You'll notice that it looks at the overall plate as though it's rectangular, locates where would be the center. And then you can do a vertical offset from that point or a horizontal offset from that point to determine where you want that opening to be. At that point, you can come in and adjust it to suit your needs so that that opening gets created the way that you want. If you need it to go in the other direction, simply make it a negative value. It'll move it that way as well. Okay. If you need a second contour, simply select 2 instead of 1. You'll notice it places a second one in there, and then you can control the second one from these arrows here simply by selecting that second contour and putting in the values for that contour. The bolt properties. Because the beams were selected, the plates can be bolted to those beams. It recognizes the members that are doing the supporting, and it will connect them together. Here we can say same for all covers, or uncheck that and determine which cover we want to bolt down. By using same for all covers, we can then come in and determine the bolt diameter, the bolt type, bolt grade, assembly, tolerance for the hole, whether the bolts are inverted or not, and whether this is considered a site bolt or shop bolt. After which, if it's enabled, we can go to the bolt distances and say we want this to come in same for all covers, or again, we can choose which cover we want to place it on. Same for all edges. For example, we could come in and say which edge we want to modify. And we can say what is the number of bolts. Now this number of bolts is coming in from the side, not going across. The across will be calculated, but coming in from the side. So if I put, for example, 2, you'll see that coming in from the side, I get 2 bolts all around. If I put 1, I'll get 1 bolt all around. All right. So this is what's done here. You can say starting, how far from the corner do you want these bolts to start? How far from the end do you want them to go? So from the beginning of the plate, the end of the plate, you can pull them back if you want. So if you needed to set a distance, a certain amount in from each end, you could do that. And then you can say, what is the distance along the edge? Okay, so maybe I want it every 3 feet or every 4 feet, and you can see it's going to place that in. You then have the option to say 1 or 2 here, which is what is the edge distance? How far in are those bolts? Now, if it hits the web of the beam that's doing the supporting here, you'll see that it goes all the way through. So you got to be careful with how far in do you want this to be or how far out do you want this to be. And you can set that to whatever you want. You may want to come in and determine ahead of time what that's going to be. And perhaps some edges will be different from others. And that's where you would use the options here to determine for which edge you want to place the bolts in or which cover you want to do it on. So that way you can set these values. With the edge distance to a point where it doesn't hit the web, you can see that the bolts come in and they stop underneath the top flange, bolting together the 2 different objects. Once done, if this is a type of scenario that takes place often, you have your library, as with many of the other connections, where you can come in and you can select and save your values so that way your values come in the way that you're looking for. And that would be the platform cover from the PowerPack connection wall.